Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Got the full team out today for a very pleasant Monday afternoon launch from SpaceX's Workforce Pad, Space Launch Complex 40. On tap today is the Starlink 12-7 mission, a batch of 21 Starlink V2 mini satellites heading up into low Earth orbit. Among those are also 13 that feature direct-to-cell phone capabilities. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast today. Our photography team is also out and about, getting ready to capture imagery of the Falcon 9 as it prepares to take flight. Our Adam Bernstein is also going to be doing some tracking for us, of course, here at the press site. You can follow both Adam and Michael Kane on their handles at X. You can find Adam at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. While you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. If you're not on X, you can also find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. We're also joined today in tracking assistance by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Currently T-minus 56 minutes and counting to the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. Want to thank the more than 1,700 of you who are joining with us live at the top of the broadcast. Appreciate you being with us on this Monday afternoon here on Florida's Space Coast. Hope you all had a wonderful, restful weekend, and we're glad to have you back with us for another busy week of launches and other happenings in the realm of space news. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we roll along here with the countdown. I also want to thank our moderator in the live chat, Callistia Lee, who's helping us out today. And if you happen to see any of the other mods cruise on in, be sure to give them a big old hello as well. These launches are made possible thanks to our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Jeff Hansen, Sulfur for Lunch, Major Trader 8, the Rocket Girl, Rick Donner, James Fowley, Trinity, aka Mama T, Butterfly, My Honey, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. Speaking of channel members, I want to welcome in our newest channel member, Steve Rose, joining us with channel membership at the PAL leader level. Welcome aboard, Steve. We're glad to have you with us. Also, My Honey, marking 1 month with us with channel membership. Appreciate you sticking with us here. Who says, after the wild weekend of 2 concerts, this is a nice way to ease into the week. Thank you, team and mods. Much love always. Let us know in the live chat what concerts you took in. Always a great time to spend the weekend with live music. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space and spaceflight, You can follow the lead of Joni Mahoney and use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the countdown, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now at the same time, and that is always greatly appreciated. Speaking of Joni, appreciate you for the $5 Super Chat, who says, can't wait for the launch. That launch currently T-minus 53 minutes, 9 seconds and counting away from planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. As long as fueling has not begun, though, SpaceX does have additional backup opportunities within this countdown or this launch window, if so needed. The window extends out to 6:21 p.m. Eastern today. If for whatever reason there's a technical hiccup or some other issue that prevents a launch today, they do have a backup window tomorrow with opportunities that open up beginning at 2:50 p.m. Eastern. As you can see here from our wide shot here overlooking waters across from Pad 40, weather looking pretty ideal with just some wispy clouds in the area. 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 95% chance of favorable weather conditions for the liftoff today. Taking a look at the goes east satellite view of the clouds that are cruising over Florida at the moment. And that possibility for interference by cumulus clouds, the only minor risk to today's launch from a meteorological standpoint. That and an upper level wind shear, which is tracking from the low to moderate risk level on a scale of low to moderate to high. See some folks in the live chat asking about the wide shot here, which I'll go back to in just a second. Some folks asking why the American flag is not at full staff, but at half staff. As, apologies, I forgot who noted it in the live chat, but that is in honor of the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, who passed away a few weeks ago now at this point. Time now T-minus 50 minutes, 29 seconds and counting. As we're looking towards the 12th Falcon 9 launch of the year so far, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline for this mission. This is a rundown of the nominal milestones that we're looking for ahead of a good launch of the Falcon 9 rocket today. As is the case with all fueling processes, you have to have the go for the start of prop load. Nominally speaking, that happens about T-minus 38 minutes, although SpaceX does take their poll electronically, so if they're in a good posture to do so, they can take this poll a little bit early, but that's generally when it happens. Once the go-ahead for fueling is given, prop load starts at T-minus 35 minutes with a loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. About 30 minutes before liftoff, they begin loading a cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will be true on the second stage, about 4 minutes after that. T-minus 23 minutes, the second stage RP-1 tank loading completes. At T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when they begin conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. We see that here, Pad 40 is the so-called big vent, beginning right about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. It's a good visual indicator that fueling is moving along as expected. That vent will wrap up at about T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Setting up for second stage LOX load to begin at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway starting at T-minus 7 minutes. That's when SpaceX begins flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. Here at Pat 40, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, the strong back, reclines a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes before launch, the first stage LOX tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before liftoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, hold down clamps will be released for a T0 liftoff coming up at 5:05 p.m. Eastern, 22:05 UTC, or T-minus 46 minutes, 52 seconds. Time now T-minus 43 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As we were awaiting the start of fueling on today's Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon is going to be flying once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 will be departing from Space Launch Complex 40, which you can see in the box on the right-hand side of your screen, those live pictures there. As with all the other missions heading into the 12th group of Starlink satellites, it will fly in a southeasterly trajectory away from Florida's Space Coast. The first stage booster, B-1076 in the SpaceX fleet, will follow this red arc here and target a landing on the SpaceX drone ship called a shortfall of Gravitas. If successful, this will be the 96th booster landing for this particular drone ship, and the 402nd booster landing to date. First stage booster on this flight, B-1076, is making its 20th flight today. Of course, hoping for a 20th landing as well. SpaceX is continuing to work to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. The flight leader in that regard remains B-1067, which has launched and landed safely now 25 times. Coming up here on Wednesday, we'll have a rare sight for you as far as Falcon launches go. A disposable Falcon 9 rocket will be used to launch the Hispasat launch coming up on Wednesday early evening. Satellite SpainSat NG-1 being launched on behalf of Hispasat. We'll obviously talk more about that as we get into the coverage of that mission come midweek. SpaceX is also working to certify its payload fairings for up to 40 flights apiece as well. They splashed down in the water of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. And SpaceX saves about $6 million per recovery effort, so it's an important part of their business model to recover, refurbish these payload fairing halves as much as possible. Once they splash down, they are recovered by one of their recovery vessels, like the one you see here on your screen. It's from a mission, I believe now back in 2023. It'll be brought back into Port Canaveral, turned over to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where the refurbishment process will take place. Time now, T minus 38 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX is right on the cusp of the point at which they will be making the call on the start of prop load today. Assuming they are in a good position to do so, fueling will begin in just about 3 minutes. Time now, T minus 35 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. I want to thank a few folks in the live chat here as we continue to track the progress towards the start of fueling. Our thanks to channel member Jeff Hansen for our $5 super chat. Appreciate that, Jeff, who says, "Congrats, SpaceX, on 400 successful recoveries." Want to welcome Tuna Kids Instruments, great handle, joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Marking T minus 34 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. If SpaceX is in a good position to start fueling their Falcon 9 rocket, the fueling process will be getting underway right now. Taking a closer look at the booster here, given how sooty it is, it may actually make it a little bit easier to discern the start of fueling. Here's what we're looking for. If you can see, if you look at the crew access tower, there's a branch that's kind of sticking up right in the middle of the crew access tower. If you take a look at the tip of that branch and then bring your eyes directly to the left where the Falcon 9 rocket is, and you see there's a slight distinction in the gradient of more of a charcoal gray to a lighter gray area with where the soot really begins. It's more discernible. Right at that dividing line is about where we start to see a frost line form and a little bit of vapor in that area once liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the first stage, which again, assuming the start of fueling right now, we should start to see some discernible signs of that in the next uh, 30 seconds to a minute or a minute and a half. Thankfully, there's not a lot of heat distortion today from our vantage point here at the press site, so we should be able to get a pretty clear picture. Now T minus 32 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. And yeah, you're starting to see that little wispy vapor form there in the section of the Falcon 9 rocket that I was just referencing. That super cold densified liquid oxygen now flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. This visual indication that prop load has begun, which means SpaceX is now locked into that T0 time that we mentioned earlier, 5:05 p.m. Eastern, 22:05 UTC. At this point, if there becomes an issue either with the Falcon 9 rocket, the Starlink payload, there's a range violation or something of that sort, anything that would potentially interfere with T0 liftoff at 5:05 would push SpaceX into a scrub scenario. Since they do use that super cold densified liquid oxygen, they use a load and go style of fueling, which means that they'll need to fuel right up to the point just before liftoff and don't have the opportunity or option to hold the count. Once again, if you're just joining us here, now less than 30 minutes to go on this countdown process for the launch of the Starlink 12-7 mission. Fueling is underway on the Falcon 9 rocket. RP-1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, being loaded on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. And as you can see from the now climbing frost line on the booster, first stage liquid oxygen load is also in work. Currently at T-minus 28 minutes, 45 seconds and counting, which means SpaceX is also loading cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage, used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. With less than a half an hour to go before the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, I want to thank the now more than 4,600 of you who are joining with us live today. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage today. Now T-minus 26 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. I want to thank channel member Joni Mahoney for another $5 super chat. Appreciate that. Asking who gets to name the drone ships. They're hilarious. Believe Ej Gustafsson may have answered your question in the live chat, but for those who missed that or were not around when that answer was given, they're derived from references to ships in the E.N.M. Banks novels. For instance, a shortfall of gravitas, the drone ship being used today, is a reference to a ship in the novel called Experiencing a Significant Gravitas Shortfall from the novel Look to Windward. Now T-minus 24 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. As I mentioned, the first stage booster being used on today's flight, B-1076, is going for its 20th flight today. So before it gets ready to lift off, let's talk about where it's been in its 19 flight history so far. First flight coming back on November 26th of 2022 when it launched SpaceX's 26th Cargo Dragon flight to the International Space Station, lifting off from pad 39A. That was followed up by a batch of satellites launched on behalf of OneWeb, at the time now Eutelsat OneWeb, lifting off on January 10th, 2023. Communications satellites heading up on flight number 16 for that company. Next up was a Starlink flight. Starlink 6-1 on February 27th of 23, followed up by a communications satellite that also hosted a NASA payload called Tempo, lifting off on April 7th. That was followed up by a series of 4 Starlink launches. You had Starlink 6-3 on May 19th, 6-6 on July 24th, 6-14 on September 9th, and 6-21 on October 5th. That was followed up by a pair of O3B M-Power satellites on behalf of one of SpaceX's longest standing customers, SES, back on November 12th of 2023. Bringing it into last year, just a little more than a year ago, the launch of Avzon 3 on January 3rd, 2024, followed up by the launch of more Starlink satellites, 6-40 this time on Leap Day. Launch for Eutelsat 36D on March 30th, and then back to Starlink for a couple more flights, 6-54 on the 28th and 6-64 on June 1st. Followed up by a communication satellite for the country of Turkey, the Turksat 6A satellite. A couple of Earth imaging satellites, Worldview Legion 3 and 4 satellites lifting off on August 15th, 2024. Followed up by a pair more of Starlink missions. You had Starlink 8-19 on October 18th and 6-68 on November 14th. And most recently, a launch on behalf of Sirius XM Radio, the launch of the SXM number 9 satellite, lifting off on December 5th. Which, of course, leads us up to today, where in T-minus 21 minutes, 42 seconds and counting, SpaceX is planning for the launch of the Starlink 12-7 mission. 21 Starlink satellites on board, 13 of which featured direct-to-cell capabilities. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX is beginning to condition the feed lines ahead of the start of second stage liquid oxygen load. We'll see that manifest as the so-called big vent beginning here in less than, or about 15 seconds from now. There you see the start of the so-called big vent, with the wind direction basically heading straight towards us here at the press site. Winds coming from the east, blowing to the west. Good visual marker that fueling is moving forward on time and on track today. As we're tracking the progress of the big vent here, T minus 18 minutes, 18 seconds and counting, want to welcome in a new channel member, Kitten Duo, joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Kitten. We're glad to have you with us. As a reminder, channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and the ability to watch all of our live liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. MT minus 16 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. With the big vent winding up now, we're pivoting over to second stage liquid oxygen loading, set to begin in about 20 seconds. As we're looking towards the start of that fueling milestone, also want to thank channel member Artemis for a very generous gift of 50 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Artemis, and growing our channel member community here. And to our 50 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Artemis in the live chat if you haven't already, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond January and well into the new year. Time now T minus 13 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. As we are waiting to see the 12th Falcon 9 rocket launch of the year, let's go ahead, take some time to reacquaint ourselves with SpaceX's workhorse launch vehicle, the Falcon 9 rocket. It stands a towering 70 meters or 229 feet tall with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9's first stage, bottom two-thirds of the rocket. The booster flying today, B-1076, has flown a total of 19 times before, going for flight number 20 in just a little more than 12 minutes from now. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that today will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the interstage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of the second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It has a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 228,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 21 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. As with the first stage, so goes the second stage, burning that same prop mix, RP1 and LOX. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be a deorbit burn, helping to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings that encapsulate the 21 Starlink satellites. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. Fairing halves, once separated, will float down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Gently splash down and will be recovered by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels, brought back into Port Canaveral, and then over to Hangar X at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights. Now T minus 9 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. Just a couple of minutes away from the engine chill down getting underway. Now T-minus 7 minutes and counting. As the engine chill is getting underway, I want to thank a few more folks for your support tonight. Our thanks to channel member Artemis for a very generous $100 super chat. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level, Artemis. Who asks for a regular reading of favorite phrase of Leroy Jenkins. Appreciate the support, Artemis. Also want to welcome in new channel member Sparky the Wolf, joining us with membership at the PAL leader level. And thanks to Psychonaut69 for upgrading their channel membership to the launch director status. Appreciate the support from the both of you. And also want to thank channel member Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Appreciate you, Chuck. Good to see you this evening, and thanks for your support at that level. Now T-minus 6 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. At this point, the first stage kerosene tank should be full.
Strong back lower has started.
Now T-minus 4 minutes, 1 second and counting. As you can see and just heard, we are getting pad level views and a good eye on the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see those clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings are opening up. The strong back will shortly be reclining away from the Falcon 9 rocket just a few degrees. It'll stay in that position until liftoff. As a point of note, you can see the difference in times between our countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and what's coming in from the SpaceX feed. Our clock is based on real time. What's coming in from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So as long as we have views from our tracking cameras of the Falcon 9 rocket, we'll be making those callouts of mission milestones in real time until we're at the point where we are solely relying on the onboard cameras from the Falcon 9 rocket. Now coming up on the 3-minute mark, at which point the first stage LOX tank should be full. Again, because the SpaceX feed is coming in on a slight
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
delay. We'll be hearing those callouts slightly later. As you just heard, Stage 1 LOX load is complete. Now about 30 seconds in real time away from the same being true on the second stage.
Stage 2 lock slot is complete.
Good call there. We are now seeing the ground gas closeouts. SpaceX clearing the feed lines.
Ground gas closeouts.
Coming up on the final minute before liftoff, we're going to go ahead and keep our focus on the Falcon 9 rocket. Come back to the live chat on the other side of booster landing. Should be hearing the call in roughly 10 seconds that the Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're just waiting for the SpaceX launch director to give their final go for launch. Coming in about 5 seconds.
LD, go for launch.
With that call, we're now less than 30 seconds away from liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 12-7 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And a beautiful ascent of the Falcon 9 rocket, now a little more than a minute into flight. Falcon 9 traveling faster than the speed of sound, approaching max Q with a point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Shortly, SpaceX will begin thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine ahead of its ignition. Coming upon a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes 25 seconds. That'll be followed a few seconds after that by stage separation, the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine, and then the payload fairings will be deployed just after the 3-minute mark. Now a little more than 2 minutes into flight. About 5 seconds to MECO. Here you see MECO. Stage separation. And SES-1.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back ignition.
There you see those events from the SpaceX onboard cameras on the Falcon 9 rocket. Really clear views of the Falcon 9 upper stage. deployment of the payload fairings.
Fairing separation confirmed.
You can see those 4 dots moving through the clouds on your screen. On the far right is the glow of the Merlin vacuum engine. Occasionally when the light hits just right, like right now, you can see the 2 payload fairing halves just to the left of that. And then about 2/3 of the way on the screen, you can see the reflection of the first stage booster with some occasional puffs coming from it. Those are the cold gas thrusters that you're seeing in the onboard cameras on the right-hand side of your screen from the Falcon 9 rocket. Some very clear views on all pieces of the Falcon vehicle today.
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
Good call. Now a little more than 4 minutes into flight. Next milestone we're looking for is the start of the first stage entry burn. That's when SpaceX will reignite 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines on the Falcon 9 first stage booster to begin to slow the vehicle down as it makes its way towards the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Falcon 9 rocket has passed its apogee as far as the booster is concerned, now about 112 kilometers above the Earth's surface and descending. Now a little more than 5 minutes into flight. We're less than a minute away from the start of the first stage entry burn. Hearing some of the bird calls here at the press site from our cameras here. Now roughly 20 seconds away to the start of the entry burn. Still got eyes on that booster from our friend Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions. Entry burn should be starting right about now. And you can see there's that entry burn.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Burn's got just a few more seconds left in real time. Although it's been going in between the clouds given the distance away from us here. Burn is concluded in real time. Obviously, we're still seeing it from the slight delay in the SpaceX feed here.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
With the conclusion of that entry burn, we're looking for the landing burn as our next big milestone here.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
It's coming up in less than a minute.
Both stages remain on a nominal trajectory.
Good call from SpaceX. The previous call you just heard, the FTS on stage 2 has been safed. That is the flight termination system, which is no longer needed at this stage in flight. Should be hearing a similar call on the first stage booster shortly.
Stage 1 transonic. Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for a 20th time, B-1076 is safely touched down.
MVAC shutdown.
And with the conclusion of the first burn on the Merlin vacuum engine, it is now concluded that, gone into a parking orbit where it will coast until about T plus 53 minutes and 59 seconds. There will be a brief 2-second burn to circularize the orbit. Then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 8 seconds. With that good liftoff and landing, I want to thank a few more folks in the live chat before we head over to our mission stats. Want to welcome in new channel members Dashinj A and Sherry Whitten Vajianos joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. And thanks to Lori Jones-Wilson for being with us for now 14 months at the pad leader level. Glad to have you still with us, Lori. One other bit of housekeeping before we get to the mission stats. We do have the launch of SpainSat NG-1 coming up on Wednesday evening from over at Launch Complex 39A. Take a live look out there right now. If you haven't already, now's a good time to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and ring that bell. That way you won't be left in the lurch when we're beginning our live coverage ahead of this mission, getting ready to lift off on behalf of Hispasat. The launch mount has now been attached to the strong back, as you can see is in the horizontal position here, getting ready to roll back into the hangar just off of the camera view here. Of course, be tracking the roll into the hangar and roll back out with the rocket in tow. And you can keep your eyes on it on our 24-hour live stream. That is Launchpad Live, of course, right here on the channel. Moving on back to the mission stats with this mission here, Starlink 12-7 now with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, marking the 20th flight now in the books for B-1076. This was the 429th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 12th Falcon 9 flight of 2025. This was the 373rd Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that is flown at least once. No Falcon Heavies yet this year, so this was also the 12th orbital launch for SpaceX of the year so far. The 139th orbital launch for SpaceX within the last 365 days. This was the 229th orbital launch for the company from Pad 40, and the 283rd overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Taking a look, here's where the bar chart currently stands for Falcon rockets. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 96th successful landing on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. That marked the 321st SpaceX drone ship landing and the 402nd overall booster landing for SpaceX. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 9th launch from Florida, the 13th orbital launch from U.S. soil, 13th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 19th orbital launch attempt from around the world. So far, 0 launch failures as far as payload to orbit. Here's where the pie chart currently stands, with the U.S. having 13 launches, China so far 6 on the year. As a reminder, you can head over to our website, spaceflightnow.com, click on the Launch Schedule tab for the latest upcoming missions to keep track of what's in the flow right now. As mentioned, we do have the launch of the SpainSat NG-1 coming up on Wednesday evening. Looking for a liftoff at 8:34 p.m. Eastern, 0134 UTC on the 30th for those joining around the world. And that'll do it for us today with this mission for SpaceX. Want to thank our friends P. Carsons with Max Q Productions, and Chuck and Jen Briggs for their always appreciated assistance with tracking the Falcon 9 rocket. Want to thank our photographers as well. Michael Kane, Adam Bernstein. You can find their work on X. Michael at MD Kane Jr., Adam at Aburn NYC. Thanks to Adam for helping to track the Falcon 9 as well. Thanks to our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. Mike Morrison being our newest channel member, joining at the pad leader level to wrap things up here. Big thanks to our moderator, Clisty Lee, for helping to hold things down in the live chat. Thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. Most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you have been watching from. We appreciate your time and your viewership and your interest in space and spaceflight, and we hope to see you again for the next launch coming up here in just a couple of days. One last little bit of housekeeping for those who are heading over to Orlando and Spacecom. I'll be cruising around over the next few days. First at the, I believe it's the Space Mobility part of the conference on tomorrow, Tuesday, the 28th, and then Spacecom on Wednesday and Thursday. So if you happen to spot me at the crowd, be sure to say hello. Love meeting folks in the real world at conferences like this. And that'll do it for us today, folks, on the Starlink 12-7 mission. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.